Welcome back. If you've only just joined us, you're watching the Daily Roundup with Nina. Now, today officially marks the 12th edition of World Radio Day, which is celebrated annually on the 13th of February. And the theme this year is Radio and Peace. To conclude discussions on celebrations and debate around the theme for the past 2 weeks is the spokesperson of the Ministry of Information, Communication Technology, as well as chairperson of the Preparatory Committee of this year's World Radio official event, Shoki Kandjimi. Shoki, good evening and welcome to the Daily Roundup.
Good evening, Nina, and thank you for having me. Good evening to your viewers.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Now, Shoki, there are, many mediums of communication, but the oldest and debatedly more popular being radio. Why is it such a powerful medium?
Just like you said it already, radio is one of those powerful mediums. It's one that has reached many communities, especially those ones in the rural areas, deep, you know. And, radio is one that has so much influence. I mean, if you look at the theme that we had last year, which was Radio and Trust, we tackled the issue of trust. And you could really see that still today, people trust radio. Whatever is said on radio, people take it as it is, and they trust what radio has to say. So you can just see the impact and the influence that radio has on our people.
How relevant is radio still, in this day and age in 2022? 2023.
2023, indeed. I think radio continues to be very relevant. I think it has really gone through a lot of challenges. People thought at some point that radio will just die. But in fact, radio continues to be very relevant, where basically people in rural areas, for instance, get the much needed information, and they continue to educate, they continue to inform, and they continue to entertain our people. And that's how radio continues to be relevant.
Speaking on continued longevity, and you mentioned just now how the expectation was that over time, the medium of radio would die out. How popular do you think it will still be 10, 20 years from now, especially, with newer, mediums and platforms of communication, dissemination coming forth, and also the evolution, concerning technology?
Yeah, I think radio is one of the mediums that continues to actually evolve with the times. But also I want to take you back to the COVID-19 pandemic, when people thought, well, radio won't really make any impact on our people. But in fact, people were at home and they had access to their radios. And that's how they got the much needed information of how to protect themselves against the pandemic. So that's how it was so relevant. But also now today we are looking at how radio continues to evolve. We are looking at radio stations adding the video element. Back then, you would just hear the voices behind the microphones, but today you can actually see them as they continue to exploit opportunities that social media, for instance, presents. So that's how radio continues to evolve. That's how it continues to stay intact, basically. Yeah.
This year's theme for the 12th year's commemorations is Radio and Peace. Speak to us about, its relevance.
I alluded to you earlier about the influence radio has. Radio can actually make or break a community. So when we are speaking about peace, we are looking at whether radio actually fuels some of these conflicts that we are currently having in the world. I mean, one of them being the Ukraine and the Russia issue that we are faced with at the moment. And that's why UNESCO actually took it upon themselves to say, well, let's see what role radio can play. And they decided to say, no, let's then turn the theme for this year's celebration to Radio and Peace, so that we then explore ways of how radio continues to be a conflict solution-driven medium.
And how do you use radio as a platform to promote peace within communities?
It's all about providing factual information. Once there's factual information and you give all these parties an opportunity to state their case, I think that way we are promoting peace. And also at some point you do find instances where radio is basically laying that foundation of creating solutions to some of those conflicts that are happening in our communities and so forth. So I think that's how radio continues to promote peace.
Shoki, how would you describe the state of radio in Namibia?
Yeah. I think the state of radio in Namibia is actually evolving. We see the emergence of a lot of radio stations, particularly those also exploiting the online platforms. I think we would see that radio stations like Desert Radio, for instance, like I said, are using the video element as they continue to broadcast, because also their broadcasting licenses are perhaps also limited in a specific geographical area. So how do they then reach to someone who is in ROUNDUP, someone who is in ROUNDUP and so forth, where they don't actually have frequencies and so forth? So they make use of social media, for instance, to really reach those audiences that cannot be reached through those platforms. But then also you look at the issues of financial viabilities. I think we have seen community radio stations really closing down because revenues related to advertising have really decreased. I think this is due to the current economic climate that we are finding ourselves in. So this is the situation that we are faced with, but I think from our side as the Ministry of Information, what we continue to do is to find solutions to assist these radio stations, particularly the community media, through our community media framework policy that we are busy with, which is actually being finalized, and we are doing this with UNESCO. So I think we are trying to find ways of how to assist them to remain sustainable and continue to deliver on their mandate. Yeah.
Talk to us about, you know, how the ministry and its stakeholders commemorated this 12th World Radio Day.
Well, we had a very, very interesting day where really all radio stations came together, those ones that are finding themselves at least in Windhoek, where we had an official program that was led by the Deputy Minister of Information and Communication Technology, Honorable Emma Tefeles, who spoke on behalf of the Minister. We also had the UNESCO country representative also speaking. And you know what happens every year, a certain company is chosen to basically host these celebrations. And this time around, it was the first time that NBC got the opportunity to host. So we also had the DG of NBC to also say something about the day and why it's important to host such a day. I think also let me draw your attention to the meet and greet sessions that we had in the afternoon. I think for me that was the exciting one, where we actually gave the public an opportunity to come and interact with their favorite personalities. You do know that they only hear these people behind those microphones, yes, but at least they got that opportunity to come see them in person and just interact with them. And really you could see the elderly waking up so early to come and participate in this year's celebration. I think that was very, very important and so forth. We also had a panel discussion to really discuss the status quo of radio in Namibia. And I think that was a very, very good discussion, which really highlighted where we are standing and where we are moving. Yeah.
Just in conclusion, what is your message to radio lovers on this day and those in the business of radio life?
First of all, it's an exciting day. We would just like to say happy World Radio Day. May you have a peaceful day, because it's all about peace.
Yes.
But also just to encourage our radio personalities to really continue abiding to the code of ethics, and also join us in the journey of debunking misinformation and disinformation. I think that is very important. But also just to call on stakeholders to continue supporting radios, especially in the areas of advertising, so that they remain sustainable, so that they can continue informing, educating, and entertaining our people.
Shoki, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Shoki Kandjimi from the Ministry of ICT speaking to us this evening on the 12th annual celebration commemoration of World Radio Day. We'll be right back shortly.